November 20th. The time is 5:30 p.m. Do an agenda review, and looking at the agenda, there's no real changes except for the order of a couple things because they require executive session, and they'll be obvious as we come through that. So the agenda is accepted without objection, and please stand for pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item, I'm going to move 7A to this section, policies and subcommittee appointments, but we do need to have a finding that says it disqualifies. So I'm going to make a motion that item 7A, policy subcommittee appointment, goes into executive session per BSA 313A1. After making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved in substantial damage. Would someone second that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the motion to have a finding that this verifies for executive session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries 7. 7 positive, 6.5. Whatever, I'll let someone else do the count.
9 minus 1.5, which is 7.5.
7.5. The second, I need a motion to enter executive session to discuss policy subcommittee appointment. We're going to go into executive session at 5:35 per 1 BSA 313A11. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. So we are in executive session, so everybody but the board and Mr. Pipers. So, we're going to resume our meeting. So I called us to order at 5:30. We went into executive session and we came out of executive session at 6:30. So right now we are at the visitors section of our agenda. So are there any visitors here that would like to address the board? No. Just checking. And we're not on, oh, we are. So is there anyone online that, who's,
Travis is here and Aaron is here.
okay, is there anyone online that wishes to address the board?
I just sent a message.
I should have invested in Hall.
So Aaron hasn't got anything back from anyone.
Okay, I'm hearing no one wants to address the board tonight, so I'm going to skip over reading the preamble to the visitor section and move into the next item, which is the consent agenda. So in our consent agenda, we have the minutes and the media packet. Does anyone need to pull any of those out for discussion? Hearing none, the consent agenda is accepted without objection. Next item on the agenda is reports to the board. We first have the student board representative report.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Sorry, let me just think about what to report. You're very fast moving. So last time I saw you, I don't know if we've had this totally figured out yet, but so we have come up with 3 project areas. Actually, no, we did talk about, sorry. So over the past 2 weeks, SVC has been meeting in its project groups, which are basic needs for all students in our district. BFA focused supports, so figuring out how we can support people for post-high school readiness, whether that be workforce ready, job training ready, college ready, with help on like certifications, PSATs, APs, SATs, things like that. And then middle school supports and services for middle school students, obviously. And so where I'm on the middle school supports group, and so I can speak to that. And so what we have done is we've emailed by now all of the principals or the people in charge of leadership at the preschools, and SATEC has been very responsive and ready to go. Because we emailed them earlier, not that the other schools aren't responsive and ready to go. But they are equally as ready to go, but they just got the email today. So we have had 2 touch points with SATEC with their adult advisors of the group, and we have decided on like a meeting time that would work mutually for the SVC facilitators and for their new student voice committee. So it's cool, it'll be like a replication of what we're doing. And their student voice committee will be able to focus on like voicing students' perspectives and not having to worry about like fundraising and dance playing, and doing more like the school culture things. So we're excited for that, and our first touch point with the students we're expecting will be in the middle of January, which is right on timeline with what we were with where we were at last year. And we're looking at December for this project. Meeting with the adult advisors of Fairfield and City School and figuring out a work plan with them. And within those groups, we've also been figuring out like organizational strategies of how can we get everyone on the same page, because we have 5 members instead of 2 members on this project now. So just making sure that everyone knows what's happening, that we're not all in the same email, but we all know what's happening, and also like transportation and things like that. So that's been going well, and I'll let Amelia take the stage.
I've not been to a lot of board meetings this year, so I will take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Amelia Wallace. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at BFA St. Albans. I have been involved in the 2 committees that Jacoby has not really been involved in a lot. I've been involved in basic needs and BFA support. With basic needs, we've been reaching out and figuring out areas that we can help bolster the supports that BFA already offers, and then try and fill in supports that BFA doesn't offer. So we've reached out, and we're going to be working with Ada's Closet, which is somewhat of an organization within BFA that provides, clothes and personal hygiene, and sometimes even food to students at BFA that are in need. And we've also talked with the Abbey about food availability at BFA and proposed some ideas regarding that. And then in terms of BFA support, I've personally been focusing on homeschooling and homeschool students transitioning into going to BFA, because I was homeschooled for a majority of my education. And I am going to be meeting after the break with BFA's homeschool coordinator, Mr. Brandon Mooney, and we're going to be figuring out how to ensure that homeschool students know that BFA Experience Night is going on, where to go, when to go, and hopefully coordinating a group of homeschool students that I will be able to give a tour of the school on that night. And that's about it.
I will also add, that was a great segue into something I thought of while you were speaking. So the BFA play is happening this week, and so the Student Voice Committee came up with feedback forms, which are even simpler than last year. It just has town of residence, like role as in, are you a community member, are you a student, are you a parent? And then it has what has been going well in our district, and then what are things we'd like to be seeing done differently in the district. So it's 2 questions, lots of space to write your answer. We have like a nice ballot box now for people to drop it in. It's not some small cardboard box, so we've really upped our game at the play, so we're excited to do that. We got like 200 responses from the play last year, which we saw was really valuable, and we're hoping this year to reach even more folks. And then looking at BFA Experience, we are also drafting a new, simpler, but more in-depth version of the BFA Experience Night, the BFA Experience Night survey that we had last year. And we're going to have the same ballot boxes that are nice and new and refreshed. And we're going to have student voice members walking around helping folks if they have questions on the survey and also getting some informal data as well. So asking some questions and following up. Are there any questions?
I just have one thing. Are you folks familiar with the program that's in the community about Feed a Family or something like that for Thanksgiving? That the Manahan family does that as part of their giving to the community, and they basically put together a box with all the contents for a turkey dinner. So if you're familiar with families that you think are in need, I would contact them. I can get you some contact info. Because there's still, I read on Facebook anyway, that they still have turkeys to give away. And if she heard that they needed more, I think the community would rally.
Yeah, we don't know yet any like specifics. Like we're still in the, you know,
No, I get it.
process of that.
It's a tough one, you know.
Yeah, it is. And another thing too is we're working on doing like community, like digital communication. So if we are able to get that set up in time, which I don't know if we will be, we would blast it out.
It would definitely be valuable to get the contact of whoever is running that so that we can do it for future years
Okay.
if it's too late.
I can, you want me to email it to you guys?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll make a note reminding myself to do that.
Do you guys do Operation Happiness at PFA, like the elementary? I know SATEC does.
City.
I know.
Big numbers.
Yeah. I know we personally as student boards don't do that.
Okay.
I think there is,
So I'm also going to be at the play. I was planning on bringing some of our community feedback forms. My question is having an extra form that are going to muddle up. If I bring the forms, am I repeating work that you're already doing? Am I muddling people up?
What days are you planning on building?
All of them.
We're gonna be there Thursday and Friday only.
Okay, so save mine for Saturday and Sunday.
Sounds
Good
good.
plan, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, next item under reports to the board is support services for students and families. It's our attachment 6B. And I believe Christina and Sarah are going to do the presentation, and Bill's going to lead it in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is one of the monitoring reports that we've talked about that's been calendared, and as we talked about, there's teams of the leadership team that are coming, and Sarah and Christina jumped up to do this one, so thank you for doing that.
Perfect.
Are people to do it standing or sitting?
I'm going to
You can,
turn it over to you guys,
Okay.
whatever way you feel comfortable.
All right, I'll do a little bit of standing, I guess. Okay, so, MRUSD strategic plan, I know that some administrators have been coming to meetings and will be continuing to highlight specific areas that we are working on connected to the strategic plan. So we are going to be going over the third point, which is support services for students and families. Just give you a little peek of some of the supports, the individualized learning that's happening for students and flexible pathways. I just said that. So all students have access to those things. We're just going to share some stories. We're going to share just some bullet points on specifics that are offered both in the pre-K all the way through grade 12. Actually, maybe we should introduce ourselves. I don't know if everyone knows exactly who we are. Just realized that. So I'm Sarah Katam. I'm the Assistant Principal of Curriculum and Instruction at BFA. So a lot of my comments are going to be focused at the high school level.
And I'm Christina Boythano, the principal of St. Albans Town, and I'll be focusing on the K-8 schools and talking a little bit about pre-K as well. So moving into support services for students and families, our work is based on these 5 action steps on the left. So just going through them briefly, we're focusing on engaging with students and families to understand any barriers and how we can improve our delivery of service. What Sarah just mentioned, extending support for expanded and flexible pathways. thinking about developing and publishing a menu of school services and protocols for access, as well as collecting data on how we utilize those. Embedding SEL opportunities in all instructional opportunities is a goal that we're working on. And then the bottom, providing that range of support and a connection to external supports as needed so that our students reach our high academic and social emotional expectations. We're going to be showing you the next 3 slides are evidence to measure success. This is based on staff, students, and families, the perception of our academic rigor. This information will be collected in a survey. The survey is being built right now. It's going to be administered later this year. And the fall data of 2024 is scheduled to be presented to the board in the upcoming month. This evidence is similar. It's similar. They look, yep, that one right there. Again, staff, students, and families, the perception of our district of Maple Run on how we meet the needs. And this will also be collected in that survey. I mentioned this, I think, on the 4th action bullet, how we utilize our menu of student supports. We'll be collecting that data, but we need to develop a reporting system for doing that work, and our timetable to do that is next spring.
Just going off of the fact that we're giving out perception surveys, I would also love to meet with the Student Voice Committee to see the data that you're going to be collecting from the plays. I think that's, and with the survey that you're going to be collecting. I think all of that can be used to really inform what our next steps are and what supports we need to do.
When I'm looking at the action steps, I mean, I'm wondering if there's thoughts about having some less complicated outcomes. You know, like if you have extend support for expanded definition of flexible pathways, or you want more people to take advantage of flexible pathways, could we be measuring how many people are currently utilizing flexible pathways and then do it again and see if that number is increasing?
Which we have. We do have that data.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about flexible pathways when we get to the high school section.
Great. Coming up first is our pre-K schools. Well, there's some overlap. So it's current actions of how we align support services for families and students. Thinking of support services really start off with understanding the different roles that are involved. So this includes our homeschool coordinators, and these would be at all of our buildings. They just might look a little different. So homeschool coordinators, school counselors, our NCSS, either a school-based clinician, both Fairfield and SATEC have contracts with NCSS for a school-based clinician. Behavior consultants, whether they are in-house staff, which all buildings have, or SATEC also has a partnership with NCSS for a school-based behavior consultant. Our social workers, our substance and alcohol prevention counselor. And that looks like 2 of our school counselors at BFA also have SAP as part of their role, and then SATEC shares, one of our SATEC counselors also has that as part of her position. District-wide, thinking of attendance, there is a district-wide attendance team that meets to align supports for students and families across each of our campuses. Trickling down from that work, SATEC and BFA have recently formed a school-based attendance team. I think at SATEC we've met 3 times the past 3 weeks. The goal of this work is to focus on proactive measures to promote attendance. And then in planning this presentation with Sarah, both campuses, BFA and SATEC, it's how can we start in our classrooms with our teachers and communicating to our families to encourage attendance and establish strong connections. All schools agreed to send a nudge letter coming from our district attendance committee. So a nudge letter is just a letter to families to plan ahead for the upcoming week. In that letter, it talks about having consistent routines, bedtimes, limiting screen time, talking about school, It reminds the start and end time for the day, when we're coming back. So we plan to do that before each break. And then down here at the bottom is just an example of how pre-K are in our buildings, and it's how our homeschool coordinators also help to remove barriers for that population of younger students. So at SATEC, our homeschool coordinator helps to provide any safety planning that's needed. At City, counselors work, homeschool coordinators work as the go-between with DCF to support student safety and well-being. At Fairfield, there's collaboration to support some transportation difficulties. So it's how can we get our kids here and make sure they're here safely. Yep.
I just had a quick clarifying question. So so SATEC's role is that, and the city's role is that, and you all collaborate on it? Kind of like,
Or which part are we talking about?
like where SATEC's role is like supporting safety, and then Fairfield's like collaboration. So like the Fairfield counselor does that for the team, the SATEC counselor does that for the team, and you collaborate on it?
That's a great question. It's just an example of how our homeschool coordinators have reached out to our pre-K classrooms. So it's just, those are 3 examples I was able to gather from the different buildings.
Okay, yeah, so I thought it was like each school had like a role. And then
No, I see
collaborate.
how that
Okay, yes.
would be interpreted that way.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you saying that City School doesn't have an NCSS school-based clinician?
Not at this time.
And why? Can we answer why that is?
I think they're in the process of inquiring about that work.
Yeah, they have historically not had NCSS, and they've used staffing instead to do the same work. It's not that the services aren't there, it's that they've provided actually more staff than the NCSS clinician work. And we have behavior clinicians that are on staff for Maple.
So the history on that for SATEC is, when I came into this role, we had a pre-existing contract, so we decided as a team to keep things status quo and see how it went this year. So this will be okay, no, yep. Okay, I'm good. So how do we provide a range of supports and use external supports to allow our students to reach those high expectations? So Alexis Hoyt, our Director of Student Support, has presented to the board before. A lot of this is her area of expertise. All schools now have restorative practice and SEL teams. At SATEC, we just established ours. These teams are all working to provide staff with trainings during staff meetings called Community of Practice. An example of what Fairfield just did, they just held a training for staff focusing on resilience and positive mindset, and it went really well. Each school has a system of a structure of multi-tiered system of supports known as MTSS. All of those teams meet weekly with the common purpose to answer these 2 questions. What more can we do to support this student in the current system, looking at student data, and then asking ourselves, are there any systemic issues that need to be considered that either hinder providing support or service? An example of this is, it comes up a lot at SATEC where maybe an older student isn't available for a math service because they're in band, chorus, art. So it's, okay, we need to notice that and figure out how we can connect with that family to get that service scheduled. That's more of our case studies that I just talked about. And then, so at SATEC, we're focusing on case studies. And then at Fairfield and Saks, they have added having Rachel Trackham, our district RP SEL coach, as a member of their team to provide that SEL expertise. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah, I believe. Oh, almost. Yep, you go the next one, Travis. Thank you. Okay, so here, how do we develop, publish, and share a menu of school services? These are handed out at every parent night, school night that we have. It's a resource directory. We are looking to add things to our handbooks, and then thinking about embedding SEL in all instructional opportunities. I just shared some current SEL work across the district. We are about to begin our second response to harm cohort. That's building our in-house capacity for responding to harm restoratively. The cohort will be built of a team of 10 people. Applications are coming in now. And then Stacy and Jeff Rulo, they are planning an RP community offering that will be scheduled this spring. Well, come at a later date. And then these are just 3 stories. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
Just 3 examples of what SEL, embedding our social emotional learning in each school looks like. At SATEC, teachers are doing this with beautiful morning meeting boards to get kids talking and interacting about different SEL topics when they come in. Utilizing Victim Proof Weekly on our older grade levels, some of them, and that's an anti-bullying program. Gathering students for restorative circles right off in the morning to establish connection. And we are having, kicking it off on Friday, our positive assemblies, focusing on positive student behavior. We had these once last year. We're looking to have them each quarter this year for our K4 and 5A students. At SACS, the older grades are starting to implement the circles. K2 is also doing that morning meeting work, and they are currently working on developing their check-in, check-out system. At Fairfield, grades 4 through 8 have weekly circles. There's a monthly assembly for grades K through 5, focusing on a specific theme, like a different character value. Grades 6 to 8 have a monthly community meeting, recognizing students. And BFA, thinking they're at 95% completion of all staff for that initial RP training. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk more about BFA.
Thank you.
What was the question?
When you were talking about the second response to harm cohort, is there a goal eventually to also include school board members? You know, as we respond when there's like expulsion hearings and whatnot, will that also be a part of the RP system?
That's a great idea. I would have to defer to Alexis to see.
We haven't
That's
talked about
upcoming.
that, but that could be a good idea. We, as you said,
Yeah.
when we have those the unfortunate times where students
Yeah.
come to the board.
Well, it's the continuum, right?
And understanding that language.
Yeah,
I'll bring that question back.
thank you.
The check-in, check-out system, is that like there's a check-in question and like a end of the time together check question? Like, do you elaborate on like the check-in, check-out
Yeah,
system?
I was wondering, check-in, check-outs are in all buildings, and the structure is based on connection, right? So if a child's having a tough day, who is someone they have a relationship with, a trusted adult that could connect with them? And that could be a big reinforcement for their day. It could be a reason they come to school. So that's just another layer of support that we can provide students.
So it helps kids to kind of, take off some steam, things that might have happened at home,
Yeah, I
can
didn't know if
be
it was
even-
like you walk into class and there's like a check-in question and like you leave class and then do a check-out question. Because I know like in things I do, like there's like a check-in question and a closing question. And mine, so I didn't know if it was similar to that, but that sounds.
More
That's where-
individualized.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Like if you're a grade 6 student, but you really bonded with your art teacher in K4, you might be able to go check in with her at a certain time of day and have it be focused on you.
That's really cool.
So the student identifies their check-in person?
We asked the student, who would your trusted adults be? Because then you have the most luck, right, with this being a successful intervention.
Yeah,
Mhm.
great.
We also have the same thing at the high school. We have students who identify a trusted adult that they feel like they can go to when they need to process or even just to cool down, That could even mean lunchtime. At lunch, instead of going to the cafeteria, I have students who will come and just sit in my office and eat in my office, and that kind of helps them to reset, for the day. So it may be formal and it may be informal, but we have the supports there and the trusted adults that students need. Which brings me into BFA, because we have a number of different supports. So MTSS at BFA, we meet as a team every Tuesday afternoon for about an hour and a half. Teachers all have access to the referral system in Power School. So if a teacher has a concern about a student, they can go in, they can fill out the referral form, and that referral form actually has them provide at least 3 Tier 1 interventions that they've tried, which means classroom level. So something that the teacher has tried within the classroom to support the student before they get referred up to the Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports. It also requires them to make connection with the parents, connection with the student's counselors, have a meeting with the student, and get feedback from colleagues around what are some supports that you can give the student. So there's kind of a lot of Tier 1 steps that teachers will go through before we get to the point where we're at a Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention. Because at the Tier 1 level, that's kind of our universal supports, right? The different levels that we have, of course, we have the IEP and the 504. That's something that is across all schools, and that's based on testing and or documented disabilities. As far as our MTSS for math and reading intervention, that can be based on scores, on struggles within the classroom, on recommendations from teachers, and we have both math and reading intervention classes for students. Family engagement specialist is our word for the homeschool coordinator. This person is really helping with truancy support, students that we find have chronic absences. The social workers, we have 2 social workers who hold caseloads of students who are referred through the MTSS process to get onto that caseload. And then we also have a student support specialist who is actually also a licensed social worker. But she gives drop-in support for students who maybe are having a bad day or in crisis, and they can stop by. She has a lovely room, has essential oils, and it smells nice. She has 2 therapy dogs that she rotates each day. She'll bring a therapy dog, and there's a lot of students that access her for a reset, or maybe she's that important person.
Who is it?
Elizabeth Smith.
Thank you.
Yes. The educational support team plan, that is focused mostly on academic support. Maybe students referred because they're failing multiple classes. They may need some direct, executive functioning help, right, or support, or maybe they need a period of support to help them get on task with their work. Behavior consultant, which is the district level behavior consultant, will come in and can observe students and teachers and really come up with a plan for how you can best support that student. And then we have a BFA Lighthouse Alternative Program. You've heard about that. This is the 3rd school year that it's running. That is across the way from the BFA building right next to Hometown. And that's supporting students who have had chronic lack of engagement in school, whether that means they're not physically coming to the building because it's too big of an environment, they can't learn in the space, or maybe they're in the building but they're avoiding classes because of kind of the same reasons, a lot around anxiety and just kind of, it's not the right environment for them to learn. And then we have our Novus program, which is more around behavior and social skills support for students. That's also an individualized program. And then flexible pathways and work-based learning. That provides an opportunity for students to branch out into a passion that they have, and works with our flexible pathways and work-based learning teachers to come up with a way to get their academics done within the context of work. So, how much time do we have, Bill?
I wasn't really looking we started, but we probably have about 5 minutes.
Okay. So I've asked members of our MTSS team to share some success stories from the supports. Sometimes we just hear about the numbers and hear about the things, but I wanted some more individualized information and stories. So I have some to share with you. We may not get through all of them, but they're on the slides for you to review later. So our social emotional support, Since the beginning of the year, there have been 42 new referrals through the MTSS system to our social workers. And between our 2 social workers, they have 62 students on their caseload. So that's a lot of kids that they are meeting with consistently, that they have calendared. The students are coming to them to really work out whatever that specific reasons are that they are on the social worker caseload. Our student support specialist, Elizabeth, the one with the dogs, she is seeing on average about 16 students a day on a drop-in basis. And she also goes out and she will visit different classrooms and programs as well to offer support.
She's a licensed clinical social worker.
She's also a social worker. Yeah. I don't know clinical or this or that. I know she's a social worker.
You said licensed
Yes,
before.
yes, she is. Okay, and then, let's see, what do we have? So our social workers, Lance and Corey, they have weekly substance use support groups for students who have had substance use violations, as well as students who volunteer to come because they would like some support or education on how to quit, mostly nicotine. The vape pens are the thing that we are battling at this point. So when a student has a violation, they, as part of their next steps, they are to attend at least 2 of those sessions during enrichment to receive more information on how to quit, the harms, those types of things. So they're doing that weekly. We have social workers on restorative practices, response to harm cohort and RP district team. The social workers are also going into Novus and the Lighthouse, which are our 2 kind of alternative programs for students that I discussed earlier. They're also going into CIP, which is our community integration program. That program is for students with more profound disabilities. They're going in and they're doing meetings to integrate RP into the culture. And then they're also offering wellness groups during Enrichment B that students can sign up to for kind of just a community event, a wellness event. So they're doing some really great things at BFA around social emotional support. The Lighthouse Alternative Program, that's the one that's across the street. In the last 2 years since the program launched, so they've had 2 graduation years, they have graduated, or 8 students have graduated, and each one of those students at one point graduation was unattainable in their minds because it was just not an accessible education. The Lighthouse has provided an environment that allows them to come in and be successful and feel safe and wanted. So one standout success story, this came from Matt Bloom, who's our Lighthouse coordinator. This story involves a 9th grader who came to the Lighthouse after years of inconsistent schooling. Since the beginning of 24-25, she has attended regularly and demonstrated remarkable progress. During her recent conference time, she said, "Everything about the Lighthouse makes it easier for me to come to school. The support, the size, and the predictability of the schedule helps me a lot." So that's one example. So Novus, this is our early behavior and social skills support program. This student volunteered the story and said, yes, use my name and picture for the board. So he's very proud, and this was shared by his teacher, Mr. Zuko. So Aries is an 18-year-old senior in the Novus program. He comes from Alburg. He had been enrolled in culinary arts for a couple of years and has really increased his confidence and his skills. He's going to be the supervisor of the annual Novus Thanksgiving feast that's happening this week. And he will be graduating and going to be employed in the Franklin County area. And he says that his time in Novus helped him to become more independent and build self-confidence. And then we'll move on to flexible pathways and work-based learning. So flexible pathways, as you saw in our action steps, like you mentioned, Joanna, what does it look like to expand flexible pathways? So in the past, we've had flexible pathways, we've had work-based learning where a student could go and kind of make an individualized plan. This year is the first year that we've had content area teachers dedicate a period of their schedule solely to helping students integrate that particular subject matter into their work. So we have in English, work-based learning, math, PE, science, social studies, and maybe missing one, but we have all the major subject areas.
There's English too.
And English, did I say English? English. So we have all the main subject areas and a teacher who's dedicated to providing support for students who are doing work-based learning in that. So that's expanded this year. Last year, Isaac graduated and he worked for a local farmer and maple producer who was also a welder. We developed work-based learning goals around Isaac's interest in welding and made a plan to incorporate welding into his work. This gave him the opportunity to significantly increase his welding skills and lay the groundwork for starting his own business as a welder. Additionally, he was able to earn his CDL before graduating and was accepted into Western Welding Academy in Wyoming. After completing welding school, he plans to return to Vermont. And the second work-based learning story, Cameron, who graduated last year. She was working more than 20 hours a week at McDonald's while going to school and came to explore options on how she could incorporate work into her school day based on financial need. Through the conversations, she identified that her strengths were in math and accounting and business. So our Flexible Pathways coordinator introduced her to the possibility of working at a bank as a way of exploring the career field. So she was open to it if it was a paid opportunity, because part of this was based on need. After applying and interviewing with People's Trust Company, Cameron was accepted to a teller position. She gained a wide range of professional skills, shadowed in multiple departments, and got rave reviews. By the end, her success in the experience affirmed her decision to apply for college, and she is now attending Vermont State University, Castleton, as a first-generation college student. Wanted to share those stories with you. That concludes kind of the high school section, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Question.
Yes?
At the Lighthouse, do they go to, say, music, art, gym
Yes.
at BFA or?
So some students are at the Lighthouse all day. Other students have a hybrid schedule where they will move from the Lighthouse to BFA for certain classes, for example, PE or art. We do have Dee Christie, who retired last year. She's coming in for a couple periods a week to do art in the Lighthouse. But it really just depends on the student. Yeah, some students will even come in, maybe they'll do their math and science class at BFA, and they'll have their English and social studies at the Lighthouse, and maybe only at the half day that they need. So it really is individualized.
I have a question. I've asked it before. I don't need an answer right now, but I'm wondering where we are in terms of cross-district curriculum for SEL, especially in the pre-K through 8th grades.
So I can jump in. I used to be on the SEL committee until this year, the past 2 years, and that the CASEL framework is going to be rolled out in the spring or in the fall, and that will further embed SEL into the classrooms. It will be able to guide that work.
To decide which curriculum you're going to go with. And
Oh, the curriculum, it's between 3 right now. They've narrowed their choice to 3.
The resource.
Yeah, to the program.
Yeah,
Program.
3
To the
different
program
programs.
resource.
awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions about our student support services?
It's nice to have a clarification on flexible pathways. I wasn't sure what they were. That's really cool that you can incorporate, especially like with the technical story you shared about need-based, financial need-based. A lot of times that's why kids end up not finishing school.
Right.
And it's a great way to support them. And it's kind of cool because you can change generational poverty, as you talked about in your second story. So I think it's really cool you guys are doing that.
Yeah, it's
Super.
very clear. And it's expanding. We're trying to make flexible pathways even more flexible.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this presentation. It's great.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I know you two have stuff to do tomorrow, as everyone else does.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda policy committee member will handle that in executive session. The next item on the agenda is the middle school alternative program We're also going to need an executive session for that because it's related to real estate. So we'll skip on to new business. So, new business, we're going to have Andrea speak to us related to special education. It's attached to 8A, and for some of us, this will be a bit familiar, right?
Travis, are you driving? Is this on? Do you want me to use this or just project?
You can just project.
Okay. So hi, Andrea Rasik, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Special Education. Good to see you all again. So the presentation that I'm doing right now is just doing a brief overview to kind of explain the budget constraints when it comes to special education budgeting. And I've highlighted the 3 major points on this slide, which is basically programming is driven by individual education plans, IEPs, and those are binding documents, those are a commitment to education. So what a team plans is what we're obliged to provide for services. The second point that impacts budgeting is that we have no control about who's moving in or out of the district and who comes in with a plan, and we're obliged to service plans when students move in with plans, and so that is an uncontrollable factor that we manage. And then the third one is the fact that when we do choose an alternative school for a student's best placement, there's no negotiation about cost. The AOE determines the price of the tuition for those schools, and so that's what we have. So those are the 3 things I'm just going to kind of outline in this presentation for you. This is a general overview of what we consider to be the least restrictive environment. When you write an IEP for a child, we are obliged to educate them in their least restrictive environment. That goes from the least restrictive, which is considered the general education classroom with general education peers, everybody in the same classroom, and it goes up with more and more restrictive settings. Some of that is push in, so there's an adult supporting the classroom. More restrictive is then pulling kids out into small groups, that you're in a different setting, and then even more restrictive is when you are placed in an alternative classroom in the public school district. And then the final most restrictive is to be in a placement that's outside of the public school district, in an independent school. The line right here between more restrictive and most restrictive is where we have most of the in-depth conversation on what's the best environment to service kids, whether it's having a one-on-one in the classroom because that keeps them in the public, that keeps them with their classmates, that keeps them in general ed, versus when we should be considering a student to be placed in an alternative program because then you're removing them from the general public. However, there is a tipping point at which being in a specialized school with your peers that have like abilities brings you community. And that is sometimes more healthy placement than being in a classroom one-on-one where you don't have peers like peers. So this is where we get into real deep conversations and individualized planning based on a kid's need. And when that is that tipping point of keeping them in the public school versus finding an alternative school that gives them their best education. So that's just an overview of kind of least restrictive to most restrictive environments and how we get to the point where we have to consider outside schools. Next slide. So what happens is that when we are considering an outside therapeutic school for a student, we go on a wait list, we do an application for them, and all of the schools that we have to consider have been pre-approved by the AOE. Little factor is that the AOE is no longer approving any more independent schools. They've put a limit on that. So there's not going to be growth in any more options of independent schools in the near future. Once we're on a wait list for a student, we have, the wait lists right now are long. It's about 6 months to a year because there's a lot of need and we don't have growing capacity. So we go on a wait list, and yet I'm still obliged, we, the school district, you all, are still obliged to educate the student. And so in that case, we go to tutoring There's a minimum amount of tutoring that has to happen unless there's a reason that they can't sustain that. It's supposed to be 2 hours a day, 5 days a week at the minimum, unless the IEP says less or more or whatever the need is. The key factor is that tutoring is not an educational placement. You cannot stay in tutoring. Even though a lot of kids prefer that, it's one-on-one, it's usually very quiet, that is not actually a licensed school. So that cannot be an educational placement. It is only legal to be tutoring while they're on a wait list for an educational placement. Once that name is off the wait list, we have to educate them in a school. So we're waiting. A lot of kids are in that spot where they are not succeeding in the public classrooms. They're in tutoring, and we're waiting for an actual classroom school spot for an independent school. Questions so far? Okay. So this next slide is a list of the current schools that MRUSD holds contracts with. I think we have someone in all of these right now. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we have 2 or 3. It just flexes and flows depending on the match of the type of school and where they come up on wait lists. Our strategy is usually to put on 2 or 3 wait lists at a time to see which one will come up first. So those are the various schools. Do you need me to read them? Are you okay? We just overview that. It's a variety. And they're not all in Franklin County. Some are in Chittenden County. So the next slide matches the color scheme to what the schools and their cost. The costs, again, as I mentioned before, are predetermined by the AOE. They have a cutoff limit so that they don't competitively overcharge public schools. The range that you can see in the middle column is basically whether or not the student is eligible for Medicaid reimbursement or not. So there's kind of a range of costs there. Every year the AOE updates it, so I wrote in the far right column whether that was the current rate or whether that was last year. Moonway is not a school, it's a tutoring site, it's not a licensed school, so they are not in this list. And for instance, Laraway just came out with their new rates today, so I have to adjust the costs and sign new contracts because they just established their rate for the year today. So that is all flexible. I can't control that cost. So any questions about how that cost is designated? All right, next slide. So as best as I can, I predict who was on a wait list from the last year. I encumber and try and predict that cost for the next school year. However, we always have kids who are moving in and out. Usually in a school year, it's about 2 or 3 will come in, and somewhere in the middle of the year, I got 2 or 3 who go out. Usually it flushes out to be more or less equal, and that's a lovely year. It doesn't always happen that way, as happened this year. So what happens is kids are either in DCF custody and the foster family gets changed, and so they're ours because they have moved up to this area, or it's just a family private move and they come in. What happens when a student is moving in with an IEP, our team converses with the prior school team. We look at what the IEP says. We try and determine how we can best meet what is already on the IEP. If we can't replicate that, then we try and do whatever their programming was. It is our obligation to replicate the IEP as best we can. If there is an independent school that is already successful for the student, most often that is determined to be the best placement for them to stay because they have either moved and there's, they have uprooting in the other places of their life, and so it makes sense to hold a place that is consistent and predictable for the student. Especially if they're already in an independent school. If I don't have an opening or I can't recreate that with our Lighthouse or our Novus, it is not in the kid's best interest to go into tutoring, waiting for a year. It is in their best interest for me to assume that contract and pay that tuition, which then includes the transportation cost to get them there. So that is where most of our decision making happens, and that is why I can have basically inherent some unpredicted cost, because it's in the best interest of the student. Any questions about that conversation or the process?
Just not really a question, just a a point of code with the unpredicted costs. There's no, like, for lack of a better term, like markers or anything out there that, you know, that alerts you ahead of time, like, oh, this is gonna be a wild year or anything. It just sort of happens. Like,
Exactly.
it's just, you've got your best laid plan, but you can't plan for, you know, for chaos should
Right.
something happen outside.
Right. I can sometimes get a heads up when another district knows their kid is about to move, and the director will say, has this family registered with you yet? And so I can kind of get a heads up that a family might be headed in my direction, but those moves usually only happen at the furthest out a month ahead. Like, very few families know that they're about to get uprooted and move.
So in a good situation, good situation, predictability wise, basically you're getting a few weeks heads up before you have to
Yeah.
scramble.
And that was my question,
Yeah.
when we went over this information before. It's really just, it's baffling to
Yeah.
think that, I agree with you, that people do get spontaneously uprooted.
Yeah.
And it is a housing issue.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
And they end up doubling up with other people or
Yes.
being in a hotel or whatnot. So my question the other night is, and it still stands, is 12 students attending the alternative schools moved into our district in the first 3 months of school. None of them have housing issues. None of them are homeless students that we would necessarily like be sharing with another district, or they've all had their determination meetings and they're all in freestanding homes that they own. It's just,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
none of them are the things that you just talked about, that were spontaneously uprooted, that are
Some of them are,
homeless,
yeah.
doubling up.
Yeah.
So are we sharing the costs with
No,
other?
you don't share the cost when they become ours. When I become the LEA, I pay the cost.
I understand that.
Okay,
My
so-
question to you is that when a student does get spontaneously uprooted and they are facing housing issues, and they are either in a hotel,
You're talking
doubling
about
up,
a homeless or housing stability, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that are we sharing the expenses with another district?
No,
And that's what I'm trying to understand.
because there are, so not the homeless expert in the district, but when a family becomes homeless, they can choose school of origin or school where they are now attending, right? So
They can.
they can. So if they choose school where they want, if they choose us, I pay for it. And I don't necessarily pay transportation out of the special ed budget, but it will be transportation out of the homeless transportation budget. So that's still our MRUSD. It is not necessarily special ed. So Alexis and I go back and forth about who's going to pay the transportation bill, but it's ours. Is that kind of answering it closer?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm just interested, yeah, sure. I'm
I don't
interested-
ever split a tuition with another school.
That's never
If they're-
happened?
No. If they're ours, they're ours. And if they stay, then the prior school pays full tuition. Charlie?
Yeah, just to follow, so, you know, if a family loses their home in Milton, basically they would be able to choose, either they stay in Milton or go, you know, say they for myriad different reasons want to come up here. It's just a matter of the family chooses, or is there a process by which it's determined where the...
There is a process,
That's
and I don't
nice.
know the process, so I can't answer all the details. Alexis is the expert in that. But yes, once that process goes through and it's determined whether they're homeless or not, and they get to choose, once they choose, if they choose us as the district, I'm assuming all LEA, all district expenses for that family.
And if now, I'm just imagining, like, if I lost my house
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
like, and I was told, oh, you can you know, keep sending your kids to city school, or you
Yeah.
can choose another district.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have the information, like, I don't know that I'd be able to make an informed choice to be like, oh, my kids will be better off in Georgia or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there, are there resources for the families to help inform that choice, or are they basically just sort of making a choice based on their own available information?
I don't have the answer.
Okay,
I don't know
So,
the process.
can I just say this?
Yeah.
So, for homeless, you can choose the school in which you had residence in before you became housing insecure. And if you, to find temporary housing, say you had to move, we'll use you were in the city, say you had to move to Swan.
Yeah.
I'm getting this out of Maple Run.
Yeah.
You could be temporarily in Swan, and you could choose to keep your kids in city or to put them in Swan. You don't get other
Oh, okay,
schools to choose
okay, so
from.
it's based on.
It's
what
where
school
you
are.
are or where
So
you
your-
were last housing.
Your
secure
school of
housing
origin
was.
would be city, because that's where you last had your residency. And your new school district is Swanton.
Okay,
So you can choose between city or Swanton. You can choose to keep your kids with their friends for the rest of the school year, but in June, you're gonna have to move to Swanton.
okay, yeah, so
So
it's,
it's for the social consistency of the year.
okay, so it's based basically on where I'm putting my feet now, essentially, if I'm
Yeah,
moving out
and
of
it is more
hometown
convenient
Swan.
for you to go to Swanton, because that's a walk down, you can just change to Swanton. That's the only choice.
Okay, that illustrates
No,
it.
the way you asked it, it seemed to me that you were trying to think, wait a minute, there's full open school choice. There isn't that.
Yeah.
It's where either you're temporarily residing or your previous residence.
That clarifies it well, thank you.
Okay, I think I filled with the homeless. All right, so to go back to like where we are now, we did have an unexpected 12 students move in who happened to be enrolled in alternative schools. That is unprecedented, I've never had that happen before. So it was in every one of their best interests, all of their best interests. We had meetings with the sending school and us as the receiving school, and in every single case, the school that they were at was being successful, and it was decided that stability for the student was best if they were to continue in that alternative school and for us to assume that tuition. In some cases, that might last for 2 or 3 more years, but in other cases, we might say, okay, you finished your school year, now can we have something else up here in Franklin County? Can I put you on a different wait list? Are you at a point where you can come into our public school? There's always conversations, and when we get to the end of the year and we look at progress. But for right now, that's what happened. There is a, we don't have the slide about the, or did I put it at the end? So did I skip a funding slide? Okay. So there was a reminder that we changed our funding source through Act 173 to go to a block grant. So we no longer get reimbursed per student that has a high cost. We're just given a sum of money. So if our student high cost is going over that block grant, the extra bumps into the local funds. We're kind of capped at what we're given for special ed funding. And so currently, with those new move-ins and taking off the potential reimbursement for excess cost, we are at $610,000 above what I anticipated to be at right now. Doesn't mean it will last for that the whole year. I could have kids move out, I can have other things happen, but that's kind of just, I'm just trying to explain kind of how tight it can get and how unpredictable the budget is. I just don't have control over all of that. It just happens. Any questions? Yes.
Who made the decision to go to a block grant rather than
Maybe your legislature.
the legislature or the agency of ed?
The legislature.
Legislature.
It was in 173, Act 173
Oh,
of
okay,
2017
all right.
or 18.
That 66,000, that's per student or per?
Yeah, per student. If
And
costs,
that doesn't follow if they move from district to district. It doesn't follow the kid.
it does. So if the kid moved in, if the student moved in like in January to June, I don't know, I might not hit the 66,000 with a half a year's tuition, so I wouldn't get it. But if I did, then I could ask for whatever is above 66. If it's 70, I get $4,000, 95% of $4,000 reimbursed.
When we are building our budget for next year, we're using actuals, so we'll be using these actuals for the special ed budget when we build it. And we don't anticipate 12 additional kids, but it could happen.
I account for everybody who's on the wait list that might get in next year, and all the existing tuitions as if they were going to continue, minus the graduates.
Okay.
And any pre-K that comes rolling up, which usually they don't have placements, but yeah. Yep. And that's what I did last year, and that's why it's off.
Yeah.
Anything else?
With the 12, the 12 students moving in that you said,
Yep.
have, you know, is anomalous.
Yep.
Is there anything to indicate that it could be the start of a trend, that these numbers might be higher, or do we just not know whether it's a blip or a trend?
I don't have data. I can tell you my gut instinct is that there seemed to be a lot of DCF placements to St. Albans, and they tried to get it done before school started. And so therefore, my first 2 weeks of September was a whole bunch of that type of placement. That's where my anecdotal seems to be. A handful were just private families who found housing in St. Albans. I mean, I think St. Albans is a desirable community, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to have that trend. We have good schools. They want to come. I mean, you just heard about all the flexible pathways and the MTSS programs and all that stuff, so I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much.
How many students do we have in the alternative schools right now?
I don't know if I have that number. Hang on. I brought a cheat sheet in case I got No, it's more than 12. I can tell you, so I have one case manager who manages all of the out-of-district IEPs. Her caseload is at 40, but that includes the waitlist kids. So total students is 29 right now.
In the alternatives.
In the outside alternative schools, 29. Yeah. Yeah.
So the block grant, you get a chunk of money.
Yep.
Do some districts get more than they really need, and other districts need more? I mean, is there any equalization that takes place during the year?
So the way they
or-
determined the first block was an average of the 3 prior years of what you had submitted for spending. And then, was it over 7 years or something? It was gonna start
Yeah, it's
evening it out. So you wouldn't have a drastic drop, and you wouldn't have a drastic gain. We stayed pretty much the same.
And the evening out is based on your total student enrollment, not your child count, or, which, actually, let me get that to different words, not the number of students that are on IEPs. It's based on, because the theory is that there's a percentage of students that need IEP services that should be off of how many total enrolled students you have.
So they determine what you think, they think your percentage of IEPs should be in the district, and if you're over, tough luck. If you're under, great for you. It's kind of how they're thinking. I mean, it's intended to cut down special ed costs, but as you can see, I can't control the special ed costs. If I could intentionally do that, we would be doing that, if that makes sense.
This is more of a hypothetical.
Yeah.
As we start growing this middle school alternative program, will that help mitigate some of the cost, especially with our wait lists?
Yeah.
And will hypothetically be able to move some of the kids that are costing us this into an alternative local program?
Right, that's the hope. I think Joanna was asking for that. What's the savings? What's the cost savings of kids who are at Lighthouse who I might have had to place, or kids who are gonna go to that we might have had to place. The hypothetical right now, I don't know if I can give you Lighthouse numbers, because I don't know the what if, because it's running, but I could probably, once we see who was taken off my wait list, that's a concrete number I could report out for the new middle school. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item is,
See you guys.
items
Push hard.
Item 8B, which is the district liaison officer report. You have it in attachment 8B. 8B.
Yeah.
And Bill, you're going to talk to us about that.
Yeah, this is our twice-a-year report. We've been doing it at this meeting in November, I think for the last 3 years, maybe 4. We've been collecting the type of instances, logged. We compare what happens on the DLO's call sheet that happens at the police station along with what we log in our student information system. That's how we collect the incidences. And so I gave you, there's some data here. I'm not going to read over the data. I know you can take a look at that. If you need a minute to do that, we can do it. On the first page are the instances, and you see the percentages of what we're seeing. Our highest ones there are traffic safety, and then in for either welfare check or students eloping from our schools, along with coming in and helping work with our students on questions they have around education about the law or different work that police do. If I'm going too fast, slow me down. But the second page, we've always broken this out by demographic, and I can say that for our gender and our student race, we're actually, it's almost a picture perfect of our demographic. We have almost 14% of students that are BIPOC, and there are 12% of students that have had an incident with where the DLO has been involved. You'll see our gender is 42% female, 52% female, 48% male. I think we're 51-49, 51% female. Our student free and reduced lunch, this is higher than where we are as a district. We're in the high 40s to low 50s, and you will see 60% there. And then the one that has us a bit alarmed is students on plans. You will see that almost 70% of the students involved, when they are involved, not all instances have students involved, are students on a plan, either an IEP 504. And we need to look into that more. And then I had one of the things, we've always given you that kind of data, that quantitative data. I also asked the principals from the buildings to talk about how as the district, gives you some examples of the district liaison officer and how they're partnering with schools. And then also there have been some questions around safety workers and what they're doing, so we added that as well. I would add that the safety workers are really developing great relationships within our school, with our students, and being really proactive. They're actually lowering the reactiveness because of the relationships they're providing. And a great example is some of our students from our community integration program, CIP, are actually wanting to learn more about safety and security, and they're working with our safety officers. And it's beautiful to see when I walk into BFA and the students are there working with the safety workers, because that's an interest area of theirs, as you just heard about our flexible pathways, so we'll do some of that stuff right in-house. And then at both CTEC and SACS, I think one of the biggest helps they've helped with, as we've talked about before, are some of our homeless encampments and folks that have been on our campuses, and they're really able to help keep us up to speed on what's going on inside as well. So I take any questions, but I wanted to just try to find some time too as well, so I'm not going too fast.
just in the future, because you don't have to give the information now, whenever we're looking at, at this point in the year, we're at 31 total, can we get information on where we were last year at this time and how many there were in the year before, just so we can look at trend information to see if we're going in the right direction or having more problems? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions related to the yellow report? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on to item 8C, which is budget and sessions. It is attachment 8C in your packet. So we had that budget presentation at one of our meetings, the last meeting, I think. And then after that, Bill sent out an email looking for board members who would be willing to partner with him to go to community meetings, already set up meetings, and asked to be on the agenda so that we could have an opportunity to present our budget. So our budget processes, and at some point our budget, depending on what time of year this is all going to be. Anyway, it's an opportunity to touch as many people as we can about what we're doing and how we're doing it and what the impact will be on these different groups. I did kind of forward that email back around, and we've heard from a couple people who have a couple of places they can go. Nakuma talked about the town planning and the Franklin County Young Professionals, and Mary Ann zoning, I think. Is that what I said? Fairfield zoning?
The select board, I just couldn't make it on the 9th.
Okay, so Fairfield Select Board, okay. So I don't know if, we talked about trying to put a Google Calendar together, but I'm sure we haven't done it yet because we only talked about it 2 days ago. So.
I can make the zoning too.
You can make the zoning? Okay, so what you have to do is connect with Bill, right? Because he's got the presentation and we'll work with you to come up with the pieces and parts. But I would love to have others of you be interested in presenting. Some of you have some connections, right, Amanda? Do you have connections with the town select board?
What are we, are we coming up with a presentation?
Can you explain it better than I did?
So it depends on the time. Like, we've been taking input here in November. But soon as we get into December, we'll start having our budget and what we're working on and the process of moving forward. So I see it ebb and flowing from what we did at the community forum to here's where we are with the budget. Through December, we'll be gaining information from the Agency of Education to, we'll first know what our budget is and our spending levels, and then how does that affect the tax rate based on different things that come from the AOE. When we get into January, we'll actually have our tax rates set at those points. So I know that I've had a conversation with Rotary that in the first meeting in January, I'm going to present at Rotary. I had a conversation with Tim Smith about going to City Council in December. I actually had Brian Doore also on my list of people to contact from the town to see, and he said call Sean Atkins and see if we can get there in December. But really just trying to give people a chance to see where we're at and how can you give input to where we are in the budget, so that all of the board is just having more of those touch points of where are we with the budget and people to be able to give us information back so you can make the best decision as a board of where we're setting the budget at going forward.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, I attend them usually on Zoom, but I can.
And that's what I meant by connections, that there are meetings that you're a member of, like the young professional, or whatever, the young professional group that the Kuma is a member of, or you regularly attend meetings, because the connections, you know who to ask to get on the agenda, and if you know somebody, because you regularly attend those meetings, or members of those groups, they're more likely to get you on the agenda sooner.
Just tell them.
Right?
Just tell Sean.
Just tell
Just tell Sean.
So,
I mean, for me, it's I'm more than willing to do all the presentation team with you, hand it over to you. You know, I'm willing to do whatever, but it's that way of just making that connection out in our community so people know what we're doing and have voice into the process.
So, what I'm asking is, you folks, if you're interested and can do it, if you connect with Bill so that he can, obviously he has to attend also, and you can coordinate your calendars and stuff to try to get there.
With
But-
Bill or Aaron?
Well, Aaron's a good one. That's both and our primary Aaron.
Yeah.
Good call.
It's a very good call. But I would also say this, it doesn't have to be like a select board or a town board. I mean, I talked to Susan Cassavant the other day and she's gonna check with the Fairfield Library and say, could Bill just be at the Fairfield Library on Tuesday night, December, whatever,
I would do that.
and just present there. And I know, Joanna, you talked about the senior
I
center.
am, but, because it worked for me on Tuesday,
Yeah.
but it's their holiday meal, so.
Well, I was gonna say to you, it's not working for me for my
Oh,
personal life
So it
right
doesn't,
now.
it's not going to.
I need to
So
go get some
I'll
girls.
do it, I will make time and.
So, and the other thing is think through your groups, whatever clubs or groups that you're in that you might be able to connect with, because what was listed on the email is the obvious ones that we know about. Takuma, is there still a business and professional women's group, or is the Franklin County Young Professionals become that?
I don't know if they have one specific, the chamber has mixers too.
The BPW, do you know, Jess? Is there
They're
still a
in Chittenden County now. Yeah, they're in Chittenden.
They're in Chittenden, yeah.
They're in
they've
Chittenden
been
County, no,
around
they're
for a
not,
while.
there's no one out here anymore.
But, think back as to different things that you connect with and see if we can come up with some places that we might not think of.
Chamber might be good to go to. I didn't
Yeah.
know about them.
I didn't think about it either.
Yeah,
I
because
just saw.
YP is a subcommittee of the chamber.
All right, so thank you all. I'm gonna leave it up to all of us to contact Bill and get ourselves connected on the calendar. And as he explained, depending on where we are on our calendar, when we meet with this group, it'll either be information that we're getting in advance during or kind of when we're already have our budget put together. So thank you all for that. Any questions? Moving on to other business warrants. I'd like a motion to approve the a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board members participating remotely. May I have that motion, please?
I'll make
In a second?
Second, come on.
Thank you. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is superintendent report. Bill?
Okay, I have a couple of things. I know we have work still to do, so, one of the things that, had a couple of celebrations, let me start with those. This, as you know, we run in the fall and the spring our social emotional learning survey with our students, and we had amazing response rates. Usually we've been in the 60s, and I think we were well up into the 80% of our students, and that's a self-assessment. So it's just a real big celebration, and we went around and recognized for the staff, because the staff had to do a lot of, hey, have you done that yet? Hey, have you done that yet? Especially with the high schoolers, so it's just amazing response rate. So we went around and recognized the past couple of weeks with just some morning breakfast, as well as, hey, thanks for all the great work that you're doing out there. It's a fun thing to do. It actually really energizing. I don't know how many of you made it to the Veterans Day celebration, but that's just, I remember my first year 6 years ago, learning about that celebration and just how amazing it is. And I got a chance to talk to Bernie Sanders, and I thank him for coming up, as I have other years. And he said it while he was up there on the podium. He said it to me again. He said it's because of the kids and the kids turning out that he makes this on his schedule every year. And then the kids just spend probably a good half hour, 45 minutes with them afterwards, taking pictures and talking to them. So it's just great. Just such a great event, a great way to honor our veterans and the sacrifices they've provided to this great country. the input sessions that we've been talking about, I've been hosting those with staff. I have one more to go tomorrow, and then all the buildings will have had it. It's been pretty low attended, and, they've been after school, but sometimes we've had up to about a quarter of the staff there from each building. We had one today up in NCSS. And then one more thing of kind of update, or two more things of update, and then agency of education piece that I want to give you. Last night I was invited to go to the Abenaki, the Circle of Courage, which is this student support group for Abenaki children, and had a great night there. They invited the 3 superintendents that are involved. We're supporting youth, Abenaki youth, and I had a lot of learning for myself there, so it was a tremendous night. And then, as the kids said earlier, and you said as well, Charlie, we have Beauty and the Beast starting up at the PAC. I know you've got quite a few family members in it, and there's some other cameos that are happening of people you might know, so you might want to attend. Some of you might know who that is. And then the last thing is, last Friday, and it was in your weekly update from the Vermont Schoolboard Association, and this is one that I think we really need to start paying attention to. As you know, we hosted the Commission for the Future of Vermont's Education here, and then they had their listening night over at SATEC. The AO released its first topical report from the Listen and Learn training around Vermont's education funding system and governance. And it did an analysis between all the other states in the nation and how they fund schools and how they're governed.
Can we get that printed out?
Yeah, if you'd like to print it out, we could. After tonight, I was going to send you the email, but the link to it. But we'd be glad to get it printed for you if you'd like it. Yeah.
I've seen the email,
Okay.
but
Yeah, it's about 23. It's like 30-page report, something like that. But we can get that printed for you.
What's the official title of the report again?
It is called the Vermont Education Funding Report. Is what it is. That's the title for it. And it really tries to take Vermont's complex funding system and link it to what the national context is. And it also does the same thing for governance. So it talks about Vermont's governance system and links it to what happens in many other states. And this is something that was a report that was required for the AOE to produce for the commission. They had an outside consultant do it. Because I am what I am, I spent some of this weekend reading it and thought it was pretty well done. And just factual of what was there. So I don't know where they're going to end with the commission, but I think it's important to, as we all know, we know what the political climate is on property taxes and school funding. So I think it's important for all of you to read that. If anyone else wants a printed copy, I heard Mary Ann, but we'd be glad to print others for you if that's helpful. Just let us know. I saw a couple. Okay. And that's it. That's what I have for my superintendent's report.
Excellent. Any questions for Bill? Next item is board announcements. Any board announcements, folks?
Go see Beauty and the Beast.
Okay. All right, plan for board observations. I say this every time, we beat this one to death, but we have plans for all over the place for that and with the reflections. Any additional board reflections that anyone would like to share?
I have just a couple events that I went to at City School last 2 weeks. I went to a band concert and a chorus concert. I neglected to fill out the forms that I normally bring in, so I owe Erin a couple of those. But typically, I've said this before about about our music program and arts programs. They're very good at engaging with the community, not only through letting people see what how their kids are doing, but the instructors take time between each song to explain why they're picking a song, where the kids were at the beginning of the year and where they are now, and so there's And, these are multiple concerts a year, so there's measurable progress that can be seen and explained very well. And it's hard with, an hour-long selection of music to hit the diversity inclusion portions of our goals, but I think they do a pretty good job through their their musical selection. We hit a number of different cultures other than just like American or Western European, or the sort of mainstream that I'm used to when from my school experience, and hoping that gets the kids interested in where these songs are coming from, where these music pieces are coming from.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah. Go ahead.
I went to the parent-teacher conferences at BFA, and it was amazing. And, no, but they did say that they had one of the best turnouts in a really long time at BFA. And not that it's not always well attended, but it was the highest attendance in many years. So they were excited about that. But I just thought it was really well signed, it was really welcoming. It's, if you didn't go to school there, it's not an easy place to get around. You're just going in for the evening. So it was well signed. There were lots of people standing in the hallways and willing to help, and very friendly atmosphere. And so it was a nice experience. And teachers were very thorough, prepared, and had lots of great feedback.
Great, thanks, Shona. Anyone else? Okay, next item is the board annual work plan. It's not in our packet, you can access it on the website. It's a living, breathing document.
Want to talk anything about next meeting and Harry, Frank coming?
Oh, yeah, sure.
You and I talked about it, I forgot to ask you, when we were prepping, I forgot to.
I had it in one of my notes. But,
Yeah.
So y'all know that Harry Frank, who is
He works for Learning, and he's facilitating us for our equity policy.
right. So we met with him, talked about what we'd like him to help us with. We are going to have 3 meetings with him, sort of a kickoff meeting, and then 2 others, and they're about a month apart, but we haven't set the dates yet.
We didn't set we didn't decide if it was the second meeting in January. We got feedback from the board, it might be better the first meeting in February.
Right, we don't want to have this interfere with any budget stuff that we have going on, especially approval of the budget. And, Brianna doesn't want us to have anything to interrupt the budget process either, so.
Can I ask you one question about that?
Sure.
We talked about that this might interrupt some of our reports to the board, and we have scheduled for that night our student data report, the fall data report. And since we'll be working with Harry for probably over an hour, do we want to postpone that fall data to the second meeting in December?
I certainly would like to, because we want to be able to be attentive to both of those things, and I think I might have a problem with that.
It's okay.
How do you guys feel?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll do those adjustments.
Thank you for reminding me about Mr. Frank. The students have worked with him.
Yeah, the students I've worked with him for a couple of years.
And he's complimentary of that work. All right, items for future meetings, support for new staff, budget. Safety workers update, I think we got that tonight.
Yeah.
So we can cross that off. Any other agenda for future meeting stuff? We can put that student data report so we don't forget it. Anything else? Yep. All right. Well, we now need to go into executive session. So, we already have a finding earlier that the policy subcommittee appointment met the criteria for executive session. But I need I'm going to make a motion to enter an executive session to discuss middle school alternative program for VSA 313A1 because I want to have a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage. So I just made that motion. Do I have a second? Thank you all. All right, I'm going to call for a vote on the finding. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Now I'm going to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss middle school alternative program and to continue the discussion related to policy subcommittee appointments. Per 1 VSA, subsection 313, K1. I need that motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We are now in executive session. We're out of executive session. I need a motion, please, to appoint Bill Eckler and Karen Lenning to the policy subcommittee as community members.
I'll make that.
Make the motion.
Okay, that? Susie? Okay, I need a second for that.
I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
No.
Everybody ready to take a vote?
Yes.
All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That was sort of, that was a question. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Is there any other business that needs to come before the board? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 8:45.
Yeah, we're better at gavel, right, Mary Ann?
Thank you all so much.